All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back for another awesome episode. We have another incredible guest with us. We got Kevin Driscoll in the house. He's from Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I hope I said that right. I messed it up three
Close,
times beforehand.
close.
So close. But he's in San Diego now, but he still has the Massachusetts accent. So if you guys need a little touching up and explaining on what he said, I'm here for you. Okay. He's also the owner of KPD Fit, and he has some of the most insane client transformations I've ever seen on somebody's page. So he is going to be loaded with really good tips. If you're interested in burning body fat, building muscle, and feeling really good, stay tuned because this guy is loaded with good stuff. So, Kev, welcome to the show.
Dude, what an intro. I am hyped and ready to go. I feel like I'm walking out of like a WWE match right now, like getting the crowd riled up and whatnot.
I'm just slowly really auditioning to take Bruce Buffer's job.
Yep, yeah, it's time
It's time.
to talk fat
Now,
loss.
yeah, exactly. But before we get into fat loss, I started a new trend and I want to keep it going. So before we do anything, so the people know if they can trust you or not, I have one very important question for you.
Shoot,
Do you believe in burpees or not?
absolutely not. Absolutely
Elaborate.
not. Uh, for me, I think most people will not do them correctly, first and foremost. Like, I think it's a pretty technical exercise, and maybe a little bit more for the advanced individual. And here's the thing, like I actually have opinions on like CrossFit and stuff, but like the CrossFit games coming up this weekend are one of my favorite events to watch because those guys are just a specimen. But again, it's a sport. We're getting a little off topic there, but
No,
as
I'm
simple
I'm
as
glad you brought that up because like we talk so much shit on it, but I'll watch and
yeah,
be like, wow, this is really awesome.
yeah, for sure. But for especially the individuals I think I coach, it just doesn't make sense where when you break down the burpee, right? It's a push up into a squat. Obviously, there's jumping and popping around and whatnot, where it's like, let's take that out and just focus on the push up and squat. Most individuals that typically do a burpee are in the headspace of just trying to burn as much calories as possible in a simple exercise. Shouldn't say simple exercise, but in as maybe as little time as possible. But there's just I guess the quick answer that I'm rambling on about is the ROI in my opinion isn't really worth it. Where you could hop on an assault bike or an airdyne bike and sprint for 20 seconds on that thing because that's going to smoke you just as much as doing as many burpees as you can. So I think there's better options than burpees, and for the most part, I think it's the ROI on it isn't worth it.
All right, you passed the litmus test. He's good, guys. Okay, on with the show. So I totally agree on pretty much everything you said. Now,
Perfect.
I like starting from the beginning because a lot of times when we train certain people, I know I train moms 40 plus. I'm sure you've had people that are outside of your range of exactly who you are.
Mhm.
And it comes down to really understanding where people are coming from. And I know we are kind of similar in the fact that we both were not right out of the womb with abs, right?
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately not.
yeah, damn, only a select few. But like, how did that, like growing up a little bit on the heavier side, like how did that shape how you help people today?
Yeah, I mean, it going through the experience of like growing up how I did is like a big reason of why I do what I do today. Just with struggling with my relationship with food, binge eating, um, you know, body image issues. It just gave me that experience where I can understand someone's situation or have some sort of relatedness to it, maybe in my own experience, that I can meet them sort of where they're at and get an understanding of that, and then we can sort of go from there.
Yeah, like that
It's
personalized level of empathy where it's like, I don't completely understand, but I
yeah,
know how that feels.
yeah, absolutely. And it's even like things that maybe I didn't experience what they experienced. I can at least understand it. Like for kids, parents, right? Like I don't have kids, but I can understand how their life is crazy with them, where a lot of their time is being invested into them from waking them up, getting them dressed, getting them on the bus, getting them off the bus, bringing them to practice, bringing them to some sort of volunteer work where it's like, all right, like, yeah, I completely understand that. 5 workouts, 6 workouts a week probably doesn't make sense for you for an hour and a half long. So simply put, like what can we focus on that you can do? So I think it just comes to meeting them where they're at. Um, and sort of just building from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know that's one of those hot topics online where it's like, oh, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, people. And you're just
Yeah.
like, all right, there's a difference
Fuck
between
off.
those people and people that actually train people.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
when, like you said, when you ask the right questions, you actually listen to the clients and say, what do you got going on? Then it's like, okay, we can help you now.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people got to stop listening to Isaac the influencer over here. He's saying like sleep when you're dead and you know, we all got the same 24 hours and stuff like that. It's like, all right, have you actually coached anyone? Because 90% of people plus can't do that.
Yep. Now, I don't ever have those actual accounts come across my feed, but I have the ones that like rip them apart. And I'm
Yes.
convinced everybody that does that, men and women that are like, burn the midnight oil, like grind yourself into the ground, are like clearly all on some sort of testosterone. Like,
Got
there's
it.
no way that this is possible.
Yeah, yeah. They're just TMI, but they're probably doing a bunch of blow at night, just amping them up through the night. Like it's like, all
Yeah.
right,
Right
whatever
before the
floats your
post,
boat.
right before the post goes live. All right, let
Yeah.
me tell you something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Now, I know that that's like how you started everything and where you kind of have the origin story here. Now, I also saw that when it came to time before college, again, a lot of similarities there. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm reading my own story here.
right.
But like how you started like getting into the whole like, okay, we're going to get healthy, we're going to get shredded, we're going to get ripped, but it
Yeah,
turned into this cycle of get shredded during the summer and then
yeah,
drink and eat everything during the semester.
yeah,
How
exactly.
did that go?
So it's funny, when I was in high school, even growing up, I was always like a bigger kid, a chubbier kid, we'll call it. And I always got kind of teased for that. And you know, being a guy in college, you kind of just like get in on the laugh or don't let it affect you. But like the
The
inside of me
self-deprecating humor.
was dying, and
Yeah.
I hated it. Well, I'll tell you a quick story, and I bet you a lot of people relate to this. Is like I still remember in fourth grade when this girl liked me, and this kid's like, I don't get why this girl likes you. You're fat, and like I remember the moment, what class we were in, to the day, who it was, and all the scenarios where that's where I really started to feel those emotions of like my body image and who I was, and almost like feeling so negative about myself. And so that's where it started, and that's where it kind of still held on because I still was never like the Jack ripped kid. But my older brother was actually a fantastic athlete and was in great shape, like six pack Jack, but he also worked for it. And he was also like a stud. Like I feel like ladies loved him. And then I remember like leaving high school. I'm like, all right, I'm done with this lifestyle. That's who I'm pursuing to be going into college. And I think that was my time, like from the end of high school going into college. Is like this is the transformation time I can transform myself. And it maybe didn't come from like a great headspace as far as I just wanted to be jacked and I'll do whatever it took. So I tried everything. And I think at that point, that's when I started training with him actually. And he was a big like mentor for me my whole life. And he brought me to the gym. And I think I started off that summer going into college, you know, doing upper body 4 times a week, legs every other week type deal, just trying to get my upper
Hmm.
body jacked. And
Naturally.
once I was in college, I went to back to want to have like fun. You know, I still going to the gym. That sort of after that summer, that was like a sticking point where it's like I'm gonna be a gym guy because I love how this feels. I love the results I got. And after going into college, it's like, all right, I want to party though too. So I was still a gym guy. Nutrition maybe wasn't the greatest throughout college, but I kind of yo-yoed back and forth. School year was just party, still go to the gym, all that stuff. Summertime was complete restriction. Like I'm having salads with no dressing, plain chicken on them. I'm training 2 a days. I'm gonna do lifting in the morning, cardio at night, sort of deal. And that cycle basically continued for 4 years. And yeah, and then after college, getting into the workspace, I actually didn't go to school for exercise science. I went for business and I got a job in corporate America. And that lasted all of like a year and a half until I eventually was wanted to get into this again, really falling in love with the whole training aspect. Um, and then once I started getting into training more and more, that's I guess I was dabbling with nutrition a bit as far as like, the nitty-gritty stuff, protein time and creatine, what supplements do I need to be on, all that stuff. But as far as like improving my relationship with food was more or less when I actually started coaching and realizing there's a harmony to this all where to have that, I guess, freedom requires finding this harmony, finding this Goldilocks of your favorite foods and foods that will, you know, nourish your body and make you feel good and have good energy and all that stuff. So that's where I ended up sort of transitioning more on working with my relationship with food and improving upon that. And that even took a while. I'd say and for having that freedom, I started coaching when I was 20, 23. Probably took me till later 20s till I actually felt that freedom. And there was progress along the way, but as far as being very comfortable with who I am and the decisions I make and not worrying about other people's opinions with the decisions I make, it took some time.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. I
Yeah.
mean, coming from like being surrounded by opinions and everything, and people still live that way with their
Mm-hmm.
families, always chiming in, saying
Oh,
their 2 cents, and you're just like, Leah, shut the fuck up already.
yeah, seriously. Oh, it's tough. It's tough for sure. I think we all have those family members.
Oh yeah, everybody, everybody does. Now, back to how you said you had your like brief stint in corporate America. I think honestly, like that's almost like the perfect internship for a potential coach because it seems like nobody really, myself included, I could not really grasp exactly how that feels, that grind. So,
Mhm.
do you have clients that are currently in the grind? And if so, like even if you don't, like what are some things you would have done different at that time to try and keep your health in a good place and try and make sure that you don't fall into what most people do when they're in that situation?
Yeah, so for me, when I excuse me, when I was in that grind of like corporate America and still, trying to take care of myself, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself because throughout college, you know, lucky enough to play college baseball, I was an average baseball player, but I would consider myself one of the hardest workers in the gym and with my strength and conditioning and all that stuff. And so I really started to have this like strong identity of like, this is how I want people to know me as like a fit guy, works hard, all these sort of things. And then going into corporate America, I was starting to lose that identity, which wasn't great for me mentally because now, like, yeah, I can go to the gym, but this doesn't do anything for, not to say it doesn't do anything, but for me, it's like, what am I doing this for? And, where before I had like baseball and again, just trying to be like that stud, I guess. And in corporate America is more of, all right, you're a business. It's like time to grow up. Like it's time you got different responsibilities now, I guess is the best way to say it. And so that was a little bit of a hard transition where I was still keeping up with the gym and doing all that stuff. But um, as far as again, sort of like the nutrition side of things, I just was not moving as much in my day to day, just because again, you're sitting for a good chunk of the day. I was in a bad spot mentally, just not happy. So a lot of my weekends were still living the college lifestyle and like binge drinking and doing all those sort of things. And so eventually, obviously, just knowing I had to make a change for my own happiness, that's when I eventually transitioned to like saying, screw it. I'm going into this whole training thing. Worst comes to worst, it doesn't work out, but at least I'm gonna try. But
Mhm.
internally, I like knew it was gonna work out because I knew I love this stuff and I loved training at that point. And I've always had a passion for helping individuals. So I was just like, let's just put the two together and we'll make this work.
Yeah. And that's like the best combination out there. Like
Yeah,
when somebody can actually like do what they love and help other people, it's like you don't even feel like you're working half the time, even
sure.
though you take a step back from the computer and you're like, whoa, I'm wiped.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to like your own, or I guess before I go down that road, I want to ask, I know you at some point did fall into the whole like fad dieting system, right? Where you kind of gave everything a little bit of a whirl. How
Oh
was
yeah.
that experience? And did you actually like keep any of the lessons that you learned trying out these different methods?
So man, I think I tried everything on the list. And yeah, there's definitely a couple things I still keep into play. So like think about fad diets. I tried keto. I think that lasted all of a week. I think 4 days in, I got that quote unquote keto flu. And I was like, this sucks. I
Yeah,
hate
you
this
made it
feeling.
longer than I did. I think I did
Dude,
2 days.
yeah, dude, it honestly could have been less than a week. I don't remember exactly, but I always remember it was roughly like a week. Um, and that stung. Again, it just my body was getting nauseous, and I'm like, this is not fun. This is not worth the trade-off. I tried paleo, which again was just very rigid. We did that in college, but again, probably lasted 5 days, and the weekend came, and we're like, well, I want to drink and eat McDonald's, so this isn't going to work out anymore.
We're
I
Monday through Friday paleo people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And then I've done intermittent fasting, which when I was interning at in corporate America for a summer, I committed pretty strong to that. And do you actually know? Have you ever looked up or heard of the Hodge twins?
Yes. Yes.
So
Before they got
I,
political, I was
yeah,
actually into
before they
their
got
stuff.
they're wild now, but they're the intermittent fasting twins, and I happened to find them. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to do this. And so I started trying that. And that actually wasn't terrible. But again, this isn't, I was trying to commit to it 24/7, 365 days a year. That lasted a little bit longer. But there are things I did get out of that one where even today, I'll do intermittent fasting, typically not on like purpose, just how my day goes. Or if it just like makes sense for me that day. But for the most part, I love a good breakfast. I'm a big breakfast guy. But it's like one of those things I'll do, if anything, once or twice every once in a while, just because I'm like, all right, I got a crazy morning of calls. I'll just hop, grab a coffee, and just go about my morning. And then when 11 o'clock noon comes, I'll eat. It's not really as rigid as it once was. But yeah, I've tried all those diets and they didn't work out full on. Just because, as you know, like the restrictions on it, the rules on it were just too much for my lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know with IF in particular, I too gave it a whirl and I'm like, all right, there's some benefit here, but it's not like not something you could do every single day. And
Yeah.
honestly, for at least people in similar situations, like I got a gluten thing, like a non-celiac sensitivity, where it's like if you eat it the night before and then you fast the next day, it's like you're back to normal. So you can reap the benefits. It's just not the magic formula everybody makes it out to be.
Yeah. And I think what a big thing going into a specific diet, right, is what's the intention behind it? Like when I went into IF, I was learning like, oh, you could eat whatever you want. If you just don't eat within this window, the you'll fat will melt right off. I'm like, oh, sick. This is great. Until I realized that doesn't work that way. Where today it's just more of, hey, this makes sense for my schedule today. I'm not expecting this to melt my fat off my body. It just makes sense for my lifestyle in this moment right now. Um, Compared to again my approach what beforehand.
Yeah, it's more so you're treating like you're understanding the principles around it rather than
Yeah.
just saying this is going to fix everything.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I know I had a client back in the day that took it to the max and he somehow found a way to gain weight
Yeah.
doing intermittent fasting because it actually led to worse behaviors where it's like, okay, I got to
Sure.
pack all this food in 8 hours. And his
Yeah.
wife was telling me, like, fucking Joe, man. I'm
Yeah.
just like, hey, I mean, this is what happens with fad diets. You promise the world, you take advantage, and then stuff like that happens.
Yeah. And sort of diets like that can do that, right? Where again, we keep using IF, but it was almost my excuse to binge at night, to be honest. Is my excuse where it's like, all right, from noon to 8, I can eat. And, again, I was still rigid during the day. So I was having my salads with no dressing and plain chicken. And then nighttime came. I'm like, oh, I still have my window. Let's hammer some ice cream, some pizza, some snacks, all these sort of things. And it will still work until it didn't.
Yep, exactly. That's the key. It works until it doesn't.
Legit. Yep.
Now, when it comes to all of the things that you have learned throughout this entire process and you help the clients with whatever they're going through, what are like some key principles that you keep falling back on, or that maybe even you created a program around that you're like, okay, these are like the core things that really, really help?
Yeah. So, as far as like key principles, what I always talk to my clients about is we need to start by building some sort of foundation for yourself. And the principles I have are behind nutrition, daily movement, obviously exercise, stress management, and then sleep. Now, that doesn't mean, hey, we're going to hammer these 5 things right off the bat. Again, just kind of what we were saying beforehand. Let's see where you're at. Let's get the data, and then we'll sort of make decisions from there. But these are the 5 things over time we want to work towards improving whatever needs to be improved. So when it comes to sort of having these principles for my clients, we'll take a look at the data and then we'll say, all right, we notice you're getting 2,000 steps a day. This could make a big difference in you getting towards your goal when it comes to, weight loss, fat loss specifically, where we're just getting in a little bit more daily movement in, or it could be as far as like, hey, let's start training a little bit more. Um, Whatever the area may be, stress management is a huge one. Finding ways to sort of cope with that stress that doesn't have to do with food. If hunger's not the emotion, all right, how can we handle this emotion then that doesn't get solved by eating the bag of chips or the carton of ice cream? So that's sort of where we take a look at it first, and then we start to develop from there and progress from there, again, depending on where they're at.
Yeah. And that's always such a good spot to start, just that awareness level of like, okay, we need some sort of a structure. Like we need
Sure.
something to stick to because so
Yeah.
many people are just throwing shit at the wall and praying to God that it works.
Right, right, exactly. And like I was saying, like we need that foundation, right? So obviously they have a foundation of some sort. So it's just whatever they initially are coming in with. Because you think about building a house on a shitty foundation, the house is probably going to fall over at some point. You don't start building a house by picking out, your furniture that goes inside. You need that foundation first so that house can build up and be strong for as long as it can be. So it sets it up for success, let's call it.
Exactly. Exactly. So now let's say somebody has that foundation. Like, what's the next kind of step you like to take them towards? Because there's a million people on the internet saying, you got to do calorie cycling. You got to do like all this other like advanced protocol type of stuff. Like
Yeah.
for you and your like typical clients, like what's that like next step that seems to be like the right step for most people?
Yeah, so once we get sort of things squared away, again, like you said, having that foundational stuff, well, first and foremost, we'll see how it's working. Like, how is getting an extra 2,000 steps a day? How is getting more protein in a day? How is getting some training in a day, getting more quality sleep going? Because a lot of these things, too, what I find end up impacting other areas. Like, if you're sleeping a lot better, you're probably having a little bit more energy. Maybe you start walking a little bit more. Maybe your decision making is a little bit more aligned with your goals, with like the nutrition aspect of things. So I noticed that's why I typically say, hey, we have these maybe 5 things we're focused on. We'll start with one, and I'll kind of sit back and see what happens. And then obviously if their sleep's improving, let's say, and nothing else is, we'll sort of address another thing once they get a little bit more adapted. But let's, like you said, the question as far as once these things are in check, then we'll get a little bit, maybe a little bit more precise as far as, hey, how's your relationship with food? Does tracking make sense? Or is this going to cause more stress? Right? We want the things we add in to be a positive thing, not feel like it's causing more stress. And don't get me wrong, like these things are, I guess, stressors. Like there's positive stress and negative stress. Like you're working out, that's a positive stress. If you're getting chased by a bear, that's maybe a little bit more of a negative stress. But stress is still stress at the
Hey, you're
bottom.
getting cardio, so
Yeah, hey, you don't get to be as fast as the bear. You're just gonna be as fast as the slowest guy. Um,
exactly.
but yeah, then we'll take a look. So I will say with my clientele, I'd say majority of them do track calories, and people will have their opinion on that. But I find it as a way just to create a lot of awareness and education. And it's just like budgeting, right? Budgeting your finances. Like if you need to save money, you need to track your finances and just see where money's being spent, where you're saving it, all that stuff. Same thing with nutrition. We're just seeing what food and fuels coming in, break it down maybe a little bit more to see where the macros are at. And just again, look at it as data and be like, all right, this is where we're at. This is our next step. So you're, getting 50% of the protein you should be getting. Let's talk about that. Let's dial that in a little bit more. And we'll get a little bit more precise with those sort of things once we sort of have that foundation in place.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I'm just over here thinking like it seems like a lot of the things that people are exposed to on social media are these advanced level strategies. And at least experienced coaches like who have been doing this a while, working with real people, they find that that foundational program where it's like, listen, let's just do the basics and see what happens, usually cleans up like 90% of that shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's so funny, like just to relate it back when I was playing baseball, we work on particular things with my swing and whatnot. But whenever I got into a slump, my coach would be like, let's go back to the basics. Let's just find the simple things part of your swing that you know you need to do. Let's just start back there. And then we can start to be more in particular about your swing path, your load up, all that stuff. Same thing, obviously, with nutrition is let's take care of the basics first and let's see how far that gets you. Like it could get you pretty darn far. Probably will get you two during goals if you're being consistent with it. And then you'll realize, oh, this is easier. Not to say it's easy, but like it's easier than what all this information I gathered before. I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
it is.
Yeah, and then we find eventually that like maybe the problem is that you're always looking for the next thing because it's like, all
Yeah.
right, I've got this down. Now what? And it's like, now you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
working. What more do we need? Like what more do you want? And then that gets into the fun mental side of things.
Sure.
Do you touch on the mental aspects of everything with
Oh
what you
yeah.
do?
Oh yeah. And I think the mental side I think is 95% for most people. They're
Oh, oh my God. It like I wish I could have told myself that like 4 or 5 years ago, and it would have made a lot more sense.
yeah, for sure. Just as far as doing that inner work, I think is very, very, very important. Like I had
Like,
this,
are we talking like dieting from the inside out or like
yeah,
shout
absolutely.
out to Jared?
Jared Savage. Exactly though. Like he nails it. He's like most people need to do their inner work, talk to their inner child, right? And figure out why they are sort of the way they are.
Yep.
I had this one client who always struggled with weight, like really struggled, having a hard time with it, and continued when working together. And kind of coming up with the mindset of I just can't do this. I'm broken. Like these things aren't working out. But later to find out, she has a lot of past trauma, like a lot of shit going on as far as her upbringing, relationship stuff, all these sort of things, where it's like, well, no wonder you like to eat. Like this has always been your comfort spot. Shout out to Jeb Johnston. He said something that really connected with me and what I've been using a lot with people who quote unquote like have bad behaviors is what if that's actually good behavior? Because what that behavior's been doing for so long with all the trauma you've been dealt with, whether again, relationship, work, all these, whatever it may be, family stuff, it was actually protecting you. It was protecting you, is giving you a sense of some sort of joy, some dopamine in life that you weren't getting at all. And I think that's just a big message for some individuals to hear where we need to maybe stop looking at these bad behaviors as bad behaviors because they're actually there to protect us. Yes, they may not be suiting us now as we have grown and we have different goals and things we want to accomplish. So yes, we can address that now that this is something we want to change. But for so long, this behavior has actually been something good for you to, like I said, to just protect you and kind of keep you try to keep things together for the most part.
Yeah, and that's very, very interesting because I think a lot of people love the whole dichotomy of good and bad. Like it's very simple. This is good or this is bad. And we get
Yeah,
into it with like certain foods, but
sure.
I mean, when you actually open up a little bit and take a second to think, it's very uncomfortable to go down that mental road, but you get a lot more understanding out of it. So it comes down to do you want to take that trip or not?
Yeah, yeah. You're getting really into the root, right? And we don't want to do that. It's uncomfortable getting into the root, right? I don't want to
Yeah.
deal with discomfort. I just want happiness, joy, and all the pleasure in the world. But reality is, we're humans. We're going to have all the emotions at any point in our lives. But if we want to, I guess, heal this or fix this, we have to go down to that root and just, like you said, have that awareness, create that awareness. Because once you have that awareness, you recognize it. And then it's like, all right, this is why I'm doing this. Cool. Now let's maybe take the steps that can help me improve upon that or change it or rewire the way my brain thinks or reacts to this sort of thing.
Mhm. Exactly. It really comes down to understanding the why behind it all and seeing
Yeah.
like, does this actually fit my goals? Like, and
Mhm.
will this actually get me there? And honestly, I think most people have all the intent in the world of doing that, but they really just need that coach in their corner, or just not even a coach, just an unbiased third party to voice out their opinions or what they're thinking and be like, oh, so that's what it sounds like when it comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And there's even something to be said. This is why I'm a big believer in therapy, is just diving into it, getting it off your chest, feel your emotions, like let yourself burst out, cry, do whatever you need to. And then after that, you're like, damn, I feel good. I feel lighter. Like you get into the weeds of it and you're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. But like once you let it out, you're like, all right, this is great. You get a little bit of almost like pleasure out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a little
Relief, I should
dopamine
say.
rush.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
I like using the example because I actually just had a client, like we talked and we're like, I'm like, honestly, I don't know if this is gonna work, but let's just give it a try. Like, because she was having trouble staying asleep and she'd wake up and her mind would be racing. And I'm like, just try 5, 10 minutes before bed. Just throw on some yoga music, lay on your back and just breathe and just kind of sort through those feelings. Like give yourself time to feel the feels.
Yeah.
And let's just see what happens. And she got back to me and she's like, holy shit, that felt so good. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how did it go? And she's like, well, I woke up, but I got back to sleep like immediately. So it's like stuff like this can have a gigantic impact. It's not all like woo woo.
Right, right. Absolutely. You need to set some time aside, even like whether it's 5, 10 minutes a day, whatever works for any individual, just to allow yourself to feel your feelings. Stop suppressing your feelings. Because what happens when we suppress them? You hold it down, hold it down, hold it down until eventually, boom, we explode, right? We burst
Yeah.
out and spiral and
Or you
all.
throw an extra layer on top of that with some food on top of
Yeah,
that and really push it down deep and pack it in.
yeah, absolutely. And that continues for years to decades for people.
Yep. Yep. But it's powerful when you get past it, though.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So when they are on that other side and they're like, all right, I'm firing on all cylinders. I just want to like get this going. Like I know I saw you have some crazy transformations. Like what were some of those like who was it? Jorge? He had like a crazy like what was it, 40,
Yeah.
50 pounds down?
Yeah, I think it was 50 to 60 maybe even.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I
Something
think it
like
was the guy after him had 40 down. But like what were some of the like your or your most successful clients? Like what were some consistencies with them what that kind of made them stand out?
yeah, for sure. So I'd say some of the biggest consistencies are realizing like you don't have to cut out your favorite foods. And to be honest, having your favorite foods a part of your diet is going to really create success, not only to lose the weight, but to maintain it afterwards. And being able to kind of enjoy the process a little bit more or make it more sustainable, I should say. Um, so like really working with individuals where, again, it's going back to good and bad labeling, like the foods are good and bad, where no, go have birthday cake on your kid's birthday. Absolutely. Hey, you're going on a vacation. Cool. Don't track your calories. Like just go enjoy it. We'll get back on track afterwards. So little things like that and letting them go through that experience and like kind of hold it. Sometimes you got to hold them accountable by like, eat the freaking cake, like eat the pizza or go enjoy your vacation. If I see a calorie tracked, I'm going to fire you, which I never really would. But sort of forcing them into that discomfort, allow them to come out on the other side, kind of get back on track. And like days later, you're just like, look it, everything's okay. We're okay. We're still making great progress. We're back on track with things. And letting them to go through that experience, just being like, wow, this does work. Like I can still enjoy all my favorite foods while also making progress with my weight loss and fat loss and feel good about it. And so I think
Mhm.
that's like a big thing as far as allowing them to have some flexibility. And then the other thing I'll add to that is when we start to track calories, have them, they'll be a little bit wary because again, they're experiencing, hey, this is 1,000 calories more than I'm used to. I'm used to 800 calories, 1,200 calories, where I'm saying like, hey, you need 1,800 calories or 2,200 calories. They're like, what is that? That's way too much. I'm not going to make progress. I'm like, yes, you will. Just start doing it. It's not going to be as fast as the other ones, but talk to me in 3 to 6 months and let's see where we're at. So allowing them to have more food they can eat, which allows them a little bit more flexibility if they need it. Because again, the goal is being able to try to make this process as sustainable as possible and try to make the plan where it can be realistic and they can be consistent with it and sort of go from there. But yeah, being able to eat as many calories as they can while also still being able to make progress. Yes, you're not going to lose 5 pounds a week, 10 pounds a week, but you lose anywhere from a half pound to maybe 2 pounds a week. And if you do that over the course of a year, that's maybe 52 pounds plus or minus a little bit more or less. And imagine your life with 52 pounds less in a year from now. Like a year seems long, but it's also not that long.
Yeah. And especially if somebody's got like osteoporotic issues or just
Yeah,
like any joint issues in general, that
sure.
could be life changing. The amount of pain that they're no longer in. Like
Yeah.
my girlfriend told me something crazy because she's studying for her medical boards right now. And she's like,
Mhm.
if for every like pound that you lose, it's like 20 pounds off your knee. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
That's
That's super
insane.
interesting.
Yeah. It's wild. It's pretty crazy what can happen like with even a few pounds off.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is, right? You have all this extra weight, all this extra tissue that's sitting on your joints, and that's what your joints are carrying around day after day, year after year, decade after decade. Like it's wear and tear for sure. So getting some
Absolutely.
relief there probably feels magical.
Yeah. And I'm also glad that you brought up the fact that like 1,800 or 2,000 or 2,200 calories is like a actually really good goal for some people. Like, especially people that are over that 200-pound mark, male or female, you're probably going to be in that calorie range.
Mhm.
And I know I've had people on here who have said it, but this is why I love that because the repetitive nature of it is like, it's okay. You can eat this much. Somebody else just said it. You can eat this much.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll just, again, it'll probably be so much more enjoyable, especially when we look at it, because this is what most people do, right? They'll have their really restricted calories, 1,000 calories, 1,200 calories. It's the Monday through Friday diet, though, right? And
Yep.
then Saturdays, 7,000 calories, Sundays, 8,000 calories. It's like, okay, and we're back to square one. And it's that cycle over and over, right? Versus, hey, let's stay at 2,000 calories consistently for 7 days, and you're not going to feel the need or the urge to overindulge or go crazy on the weekend, where you'll probably feel a little bit more sane, a little bit more relaxed about it. And this is one thing I always mention to my clients as well is, if we look at the week as a whole, yes, let's say 2,000 calories is their deficit. If we're there Monday through Friday and then you have 2,500 calories on Saturday and then 2,000 calories again on Sunday, it's like, guess what? You're still in a deficit for the week. Like that's still sustainable, and if that works for your lifestyle, go for it. Like that's, looking big picture. If you're at maintenance 4, 5, 6, 7 days out of the month, you're still globally in a deficit as long as you're in your numbers on the other days, right? So that's again
Exactly.
always, I think, important part for a lot of people to hear is we got to look at big picture. We can't be so nitty gritty on the day to day. Like, yes, we have things we need to take care of day to day, but let's look at the big picture. Let's see what's going on globally. And then we sort of get that perspective where it's like, oh, we're actually okay. We're in a good spot.
Yep. And I love like telling clients like just track it. I don't even care if you're accurate in the least bit. I just want you to put it in there and they're like, "Oh, then what's the point?" And it's like, are you really going to log the fact that you just drank an entire bottle of wine, that you had cheesy fry as appetizers, that you had a gigantic steak with loaded mashed potatoes and a dessert? And it's like, well, no, I wouldn't want you to see that. It's like,
Yeah,
there you
exactly.
go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It forces them to be real.
Yep. Yep. That's one of the like the most underrated parts of tracking is that when you know you actually have to put it down and be accountable to your actions, you make better decisions.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Especially when again, that's probably one of the benefits of having a coach, someone see it on the other side is it's just going to make you put some effort into your decision making, where when you don't have someone to report to or maybe you're not reporting it yourself, you're kind of like, oh, well, no one else is going to see it, or if I don't track it, then it
Yeah.
didn't happen, or whatever
Or
whatever
or
they
it's
think.
just this one time, even though that one time happened 5 times. It's just
Yeah,
this one time.
yeah, this one time, week over week, month over month. But
Hmm.
um, but yeah, for sure. It does. And I think that's an important part. Like we were talking about the mental side of things. It just creates awareness. You know, when we can create awareness with sort of the root of the inner work, right? Like what's causing us to react or act this way, or when we're tracking calories, it's just creating awareness. I think awareness is a huge sort of thing to make sure we're trying to get into their life is like let's just create awareness of like why you're doing these things and or like what decisions you're making. We're tracking, obviously, like you said, it just has you create awareness of that decision you might or might not make.
100%, because that awareness gives you the power. Like
Mhm.
I don't know about anybody else, but when you see like calories on the menu, you're naturally going to pick something that's not the highest calorie option. One, because you don't want to be that person, and
Yeah.
two is like, well, if I'm have these goals and I have this information in front of me, I'm going to make the educated decision. So
Yeah.
if you don't have that in front of you, going that extra mile and looking it up on your tracker can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just knowing that you have to, it just reminds you, it's like what the goal. I want to make a decision that aligns with this goal. So let's take a look at this and then we'll sort of come up with a decision that works. And it can be the decision that's like, hey, this actually is maybe a little bit more flexible, I'll call it, but it still aligns with my calories. Cool. Let's nail that. Or maybe you do make something that saves a little room for dessert or whatever.
Exactly. Then we're learning the whole art of what can you get away with. Because
Right.
like if you know, okay, if I do this, I should do this,
Yeah.
then that's going to carry over past tracking. You're going to be like, well, I did this when I was counting all my numbers up, so I could just do this without, regardless of if it's in the tracker or not, my body's going to respond the same way.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, we've gone down the rabbit hole a bit on this, and I'm so glad that we did because I think that people listening are going to kind of get a lot more out of the whole idea of calorie counting, the whole idea of just keeping themselves accountable and getting a real idea of what's holding them back.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that this is like a really good spot to put a cap on it, and we'll
Yeah.
just like let it marinate for the people. But
Yeah.
before we head out of here, I want to make sure that they know how to find you. So if somebody's listening and they're like, damn, this guy, Kevin, I want to follow him. I want to see his stuff. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. KPD fit most things like Instagram's KPD.fit, X, I almost called it Twitter, but X and
It's
Red
still Twitter.
KPD fit. Website's simple www.kpdfit. So everything's KPD fit. KPD.fit, I should say, is the website. But yeah, if you type in KPD fit, I'm sure you'll find it. If you end up following me or anything like that, definitely don't hesitate to just say hi. I'd love to connect with anyone who's listening.
Absolutely. And if anybody here heard something from Kevin or myself and they're like, damn, that was good, or they have somebody in their head that they're like, man, they really need to hear this, go ahead and send it their way. Tell them that Brian and Kevin say hi, love you, hope you got a lot out of this. And if you don't have anybody in mind, just make sure you follow so you don't miss another episode. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in all the way through. Hope to see you next week. But until then, go kick some ass. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Brian.